Lady of Scissors. Our town has had a lot of folklore and urban legends, most of which is fueled by the trauma and grief surrounding the past of those who live here. Recently, the old schoolhouse was scheduled for demolition, and when I went inside to make sure the place wouldn't cause any issues for the demolition, I found a small book, only a few pages long. The book was inside one of the student desks, covered in a thick layer of dust. I was interested, so I took it to have a look at later. Now, the reason why I'm writing about this is because the main character has the same name as a little girl who died here a long time ago. She was found mutilated in the forest a stone's throw away from the schoolhouse. Her name was Alyssa, a relative of mine. I can't remember if she was supposed to be a cousin or something like that, but I thought it was a coincidence as I started reading, until I saw how it ended. I have attached the story here. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Alyssa, and Alyssa was very thoughtful. She was kind and would help all those who she believed needed her help. She had the praise of both young and old, as she was selfless and tender. Unfortunately, one day, little Alyssa decided to help the wrong person, a young man who seemed clouded by his past. The man was sick, with some infection growing within him. Alyssa believed the young man's stories of his tragic past and felt very bad for him. Moved with pity, she decided to tend to his needs each day, checking on him, often bringing him some tea and snacks from her home. Then she'd sit with him and chat, as he had nobody else to talk to. He was a reclusive man. One day, Alyssa didn't come back home, and her parents grew worried about her, so they got a nice policeman to help them find her. Little Alyssa was found in the middle of the forest. She wasn't awake and was hurt very badly. The young man who she had gone to visit was nowhere to be found. When the police went to question him, as he was the last person seen with the girl, the man was never found, and Alyssa was never the same. She was changed and now kept to herself. Alyssa grew up to be very sad. She wouldn't tell anybody what had happened to her, and her parents tried their best to help her. Alyssa became clouded by her past, and she became very sick. Although nobody could see anything wrong with her, Alyssa said that she could feel her sickness growing inside her, but nobody knew what was within her. She felt alone. Nobody knew her pain, but she didn't get rid of the sickness inside of her. She let it fester, let it spread. She was too afraid of removing the sickness inside her. She didn't want to confront all the pain that would be involved, so she continued her days pretending she was fine, until one day, someone known only as the Lady of Scissors came to visit her. The Lady of Scissors was strange. She had long black hair and cloudy eyes. On her left hand, she carried two long pairs of scissors, which she'd snip away at the air with, constantly. On the other hand, she had scissors where her fingers were missing. The ends of her fingers, from the uppermost first and second joint, were missing, and in their place, there was a pair of scissors, each one without the handles. Her fingers on that hand were hardly even fingers anymore. They were now mostly just scissors. Each finger, above the first joint, was merely a long scissor blade connected to another scissor blade by a joint. The blades were quite menacing. Alyssa didn't like the Lady of Scissors, nor did she like her fingers. They frightened her, being long, thin, and sharp, made of metal rather than flesh, and always snipping and slicing in the air. The Lady of Scissors came uninvited, and Alyssa was as confused as she was unnerved. "Hello, what is your name, my lady?" Alyssa asked, but she already knew the answer. The lady only laughed at the question. Then she held out her right hand, its blade-like fingers moving with unnatural liveliness as if they were made of flesh and bone. "I am here to do what you could not, my child." Then she stepped through the doorway and stood in the house. She only said one more thing before she began her chase. "I am here to cut out that which stains you, that which you have let grow for far too long." Alyssa ran past the Lady of Scissors and ran into the forest near her home, knowing that she couldn't get away if she was to stay confined inside the house. She ran, hopping across the rocks, dashing behind each tree, moving deep into the foliage, as deep as she could go, hoping desperately that the Lady of Scissors would not find her. Alyssa felt something squirm, something spread, something grow within her, and she knew what she would need to do, but could not bring herself to do it. The sunlight that shone through the tall grass in front of her was beautiful, serene, and for a moment, she forgot about her crisis. Then the tall grass in front of her broke as her blades tore through. Alyssa screamed, as loud as she could. She left her hiding spot and ran desperately through the forest. It was all too familiar, and when she looked behind her, she expected to see the young man from her past trailing behind. But it wasn't the young man, it was something much worse. The Lady of Scissors was chasing her, arms outstretched. Alyssa made a sharp turn and then hid behind a tree as the lady ran past. Unaware of her location, Alyssa finally had time to catch her breath until a pair of scissors flew through the air and got stuck in the tree's bark above her head. The scissors continued to snip, 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 as though it was alive, even though no hand was touching it. Each snip with each beat of Alyssa's heart. Her heart stopped as she looked to see what through the pair of scissors. The Lady of Scissors ran screaming towards her, slashing frantically like a wild animal. Alyssa tried to flee, but a blade sunk into her back after a short flight from the Lady of Scissors. Alyssa collapsed to the ground and found it hard to breathe. Then the Lady of Scissors stood over her. Alyssa had her arm underneath her back, trying to keep some space between the ground and the blade in her back, so that it would not be pushed in any further by the forest floor. As the Lady of Scissors leaned in close, holding her unnatural fingers just inches away from Alyssa's face, Alyssa then tore the blade from her back and slashed it across the woman's face, making a metallic screech as the Lady of Scissors' face seemed to fall off of her head. That was when Alyssa realized the woman's face was made of paper, carefully folded and molded to look like a woman's face. Alyssa's eyes widened in terror as she saw what lay beneath. The Lady of Scissors' true face was a monstrous nightmare of blades and joints, all folded and positioned just perfectly to serve the function of what a face would be able to do. The lady's jaws were also jointed blades macheted together to form a jagged, glinting scowl, covered in the pointed blades of what Alyssa realized were all scissors. The Lady of Scissors held her hands over her face. But before Alyssa could use the opportunity and escape, the lady then grabbed Alyssa's foot as she tried to run, using her bladed claws. The pain was immense, and Alyssa screamed out, but nobody could hear her. There was nobody to help her, just like the last time. The Lady of Scissors then drove her bladed fingers into Alyssa's torso, into her very core, and before Alyssa's vision faded to black, she saw that which the lady removed from her body. Children, remember that you should deal with that which is within you. Do not hide from it. You cannot hide from yourself. Do not ignore it, or it will only get worse. There are some wounds that do not heal with time, and some scars that threaten you and others. The sickness is very real, and only those who have gone through something very horrible can get it. So remember to remove the sickness. Save yourself and others, because if you don't remove the sickness and confront that which clouds your mind, then the Lady of Scissors will come for you, in one way or another.